So, calling the meeting, Winnebago County Mental Health Board meeting to order Wednesday, December 4th at 2:00. Roll call, Mary Ann Abadi present, Andrew Bradshaw. Here. Dr. Copeland.
Here.
Dr. Giardini.
Here.
Dr. Gorski.
Here.
Dick Cooner.
Here.
Margie Lindmark. Kim Neighbor.
Here.
Jeff Nielsen. Dr. Kinney.
Here.
Mohammed Yunus. Okay, moving on, we do not have a public comment today. We do have a presentation for an accelerator award from Crusader Community Health. And Carrie White is here to present, and welcome. Welcome.
Give me 1 second to get this screen share on.
Mary Ann said, I'm welcome. Terry White, Crusader Community Health. And we're here to present on our accelerator award request, specifically new behavioral health access point at our Linden Road clinic. An essential tenet of Crusader's overall model of care is making services accessible and available to patients and the community. And this includes opening new clinics in the area within the community where there are identified gaps and needs. Crusader believes in bringing our array of services to our patients and not expect our patients to travel to a clinic that is not convenient to them. In 2023, Crusader saw more than 60,000 patients, and behavioral health visits expanded by 33% over that year, which leads us to why we're here. You can see here that these are our clinics here in Winnebago County, the red one being our city clinic. Next slide, please. That being said, Crusader will build a new clinic at the corner of Linden Road and South Alpine Roads in Southern Rockford. At an estimated cost between $12 million and $14 million, it will be more than 28,000 square feet with over 30 medical exam rooms. Groundbreaking is planned for the spring of 2025 and scheduled to open summer of 2026. Services that are planned to be offered at this clinic include primary care, women's health, pediatrics, behavioral health, Crusader now our walk-in clinic, and an on-site laboratory. Specifically for behavioral health, Crusader Behavioral Health provides treatment for mental health, substance use, behavioral health issues, utilizing an integrated model of care in the community support system framework, and at all of our clinics. These services are available to children, adolescents, adults, and families. And this is the plan then for also at our Linden clinic. Specifically, that we provide and are planning on providing include assessment, diagnosis, therapy conducted by licensed clinicians, behavioral health specific case management services, MET services for adults with opioid use disorder and alcohol use disorder, and then telepsychiatry services depending on the need and space availability. There were a few questions that were raised at the initial review of this accelerator award, which we hope to here address. The first one being, what are the specific safety risk plans for this location? For example, the need for emergency inpatient hospitalization. Again, with this being another clinic among our existing primary care clinics, our processes and workflows will be the same as they would be at any of our other locations. This includes patients, staff, visitor, property safety policies and procedures that are in alignment and in accordance with state and federal accreditation entities. We have Crusader employees who, as part of their state license, are qualified to complete hospitalization forms and thus ensure emergency service response and then patient transport. When we use emergency services to transport patients to our local hospital emergency departments, where those patients then are further evaluated for a higher level of care if that's necessary. And then finally, on this one, we participate in a health information exchange with our hospital systems so that we can more effectively and in real time coordinate care for patients. Second question being, what are the proposed number of individuals moving from established sites? So we're developing staffing models and budgets to plan for the addition of staff, including behavioral health providers, consultants, and case managers. We are not planning on redeploying or reducing current staff at the other clinics. The accessibility and available will remain consistent at those existing clinics. There's no intention to supplant care or create barriers at any existing clinics. So again, this is a new access point intended to increase availability, convenience, and access to more patients to receive services and treatment, and that includes for behavioral health services. Then the final question, what will the accelerator request fund? The funding will guarantee a dedicated behavioral health suite, and the proposed amount of space will be guaranteed. The initial building renderings include space for behavioral health, and our intention is to provide behavioral health services. However, this space is not guaranteed for behavioral health services, and without this funding, that space could be repurposed. The renderings are not final, and thus the amount of space could also be decreased if it's determined that another service line needs more space. The specific behavioral health suite will include 4 individual treatment rooms, a shared clinical space with 4 additional staff workstations, and a small meeting area, and again, dedicated for the purpose of behavioral health. The space also then allows for future growth in capacity, not only in workforce, but also in services such as telepsychiatry. So we know, with over time, or how we start with behavioral health, that has grown throughout our footprint, throughout our clinics. So space has been an issue. This allows us then, like I said, to have dedicated space in an amount that we see being sufficient to sustain growth and then be able to keep that growth over time. And then this is the final slide. Just a little information about what we see in our clinics. Any questions?
You said you saw a 33% increase?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, in this new facility, how many people do you think are going to be working just in that department?
We would start, our anticipation is starting with 1 behavioral health provider,
Okay.
1 case manager.
Okay.
That's how we've done it at our other clinics, and that's how we would.
And it's worked.
That's what, yeah.
Well, Crusader Clinic, you guys have been a staple in this community for a very long time. I mean, you have a good reputation. To move it out there, no zip code is exempt from that. So, okay, good. I mean, I just was curious how many people you're gonna have, and we know it is tough to get psychiatrists in this town. And other mental health workers, so, I mean, there could be a good recruitment program there too, that would probably be beneficial to you.
Right. Good point.
A question, Jason, is it hard to put the slide show back up?
No,
And go to the second to the last slide, if that's not too difficult.
This one?
Yeah, thank you. So, stating what I think is the obvious, the building's going to be built. Right. So this funding does not impact the fact that the building will be built. So in looking at your first bullet point there, is the implication of that from Crusader strategic thinking or business planning that without this funding, the repurposing of the space would occur because other service lines are more profitable than mental health? I'm trying to get, I agree with Terry completely. You all do a phenomenal job. This location makes perfect sense. Treating this population makes perfect sense. But knowing where I came from in my professional life, the building's gonna be built, without this funding, it sounds like it's in jeopardy that it will be dedicated to behavioral health. And I'm just wondering what well, not that you have to share with us what the repurposed space would look like, but it's the thinking is we have to use it for something other than mental health in order to be more comfortable.
I think that's a great question because we struggle with that on the front end as well. As you all know, you've already given us 2 accelerator grants to expand at West State as well as Outlay. This one really identifies space that we're ahead of the curve this time, rather than coming to you later saying, you know, we've run out of space. So I wouldn't say, Bill, there's an active plan to repurpose it. We just felt that this would secure it from a sustainability going forward standpoint. This is our behavioral health space. The way we would design it is mostly that it would be set up for counseling. It's not exam rooms. And that's one of the things that we've struggled with a bit, is putting behavioral health in exam rooms are great if you can do the warm handoff. They're not so good if you're doing counseling in an exam room. So these are more set up as traditional counseling and therapy rooms. And it's a suite that's separate and apart from other parts of the clinic.
Great. Thanks, Terry. Appreciate it.
So you're not saying that without our funding, that you would not include behavioral health?
No, I mean, it's not dependent on it, but it could shift. I mean, literally, we put the bids on we put the specs on the street this week. So we'll see where the bids come in, because we have no idea at this point. I mean, that could alter our plans, because we don't know exactly what it's going to cost at this point. But we're committed to the integrated model. And we'll figure out another way to make it work if the funding's not available. But what we know is that we've had great success with it.
Right.
What we're really asking for is an identified space, if you will, that will be committed to behavioral health, because it's really set up that way. And as we've struggled a bit with the demand, I'll be honest with you, the warm handoff really works if you've got options. What we found is that we often have our schedules are full. And thanks to this group and being able to fund some of the staff that we have been able to, the demand was always there. We always knew it was there. This allows it to get the service. These allow patients to get the services they need. And in a more comfortable setting. They're used to coming to the clinic, and this just works better for them.
So is it fair to say the key word there is guarantee? So with this, then you're planning to proceed with a guaranteed space.
Yeah.
Without the chance of it
Going somewhere else. Yeah.
Okay.
And it is really set up as Will described it. It's a behavioral health suite, if you will. It's about, I'm going to say 1,400 square feet.
Okay.
Any other questions? Hearing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Yes. Okay, moving on to our monthly activity report. Jason?
Sure, I just mentioned that we did 8 more site visits in the month of November. We've already started site visits in December. We'll have all of those wrapped up, Alex,
Next week, I think.
next week. So, and that will conclude the site visits for all of the programs that are on 1-year contracts. We'll be discussing what the renewal process might look like in discussion today. And then we can move on in the spring to the site visits for those programs that have the multi-year contracts. Just to give you another heads up on something that's kind of in process. We've been in discussion, I've been in discussion with Marlena Dockin and Jeff Holmgren who operate the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council about updating the sequential intercept mapping that had been done back in 2021, I believe, to account for all of the new services and programs that are primarily funded by the Mental Health Board, some that may be funded through other sources. And Scott Block from the state, who is the state court behavioral health administrator, has offered to facilitate that process for us. And we were going to use the Next Learning Network collaborative meeting as an opportunity to pull in all of the mental health board funded programs, as well as those that participate in the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, to do a collaborative network workshop for 3 hours to update that map. And at the back end of that, we'd love to come back and present that to the mental health board to show what that ecosystem looked like in 2021 to what it looks like now in 2025, I guess. When we do that.
I'm sorry, what is the sequential intercept mapping?
That is the kind of best practice model from the federal SAMHSA that essentially maps out all of the intercept points for people with mental illness or substance use issues in criminal justice, and kind of provides at each part of the criminal justice system what would be the way that you could intercept and bring that person out of traditional pathway into a therapeutic pathway. And so whether it's crisis co-response at the, intercept point 0, I believe, which is before there's even something, maybe that's intercept 1. I have to refresh my memory on that, but there's like, I think 5 different intercept points, and there's, depending on how far along you are in the criminal justice, what the way to create a therapeutic pathway would be. So we'll be examining that and seeing if what we have now is meeting the best practice model of each of those intercept points.
And one other question, the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, is the U.S. Attorney, whoever our assistant U.S. Attorney, they are part of that?
The state's attorney is, I'm not sure if the U.S. attorney is.
The reason I ask that is because U.S. attorneys have Project Safe Neighborhood monies
Yeah.
that are supposed to be
I could ask,
designated for that type of thing.
yeah, so I believe that Marlena Dockin, I could follow up with her, who administrates the CJCC, also manages the Project Safe Neighborhood grants.
Okay.
And participates in the task force for that, so I could certainly ask her if it would be appropriate to include them in the project, but either way, I think she would be familiar with what those projects are that are being funded.
Okay.
But that's a very follow-up question.
Highlights,
No, I think that's it, thank you.
okay. Moving on to program year 4-6, special conditions.
Minutes first.
Oh, I forgot the minutes, sorry. Sorry about that. The month that we will need a motion to approve the November 2024 meeting minutes. please.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
Tim, okay, any discussion, corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, now we can move on to the, I guess I really jumped here, but we're at the special conditions, for program year 4 to 6. Okay,
Sure, I can briefly give you a summary of this. So the merit program in their original budget had some dollars for billboards. And one of the special conditions the mental health board put on that was for them to develop a marketing plan essentially that would kind of illuminate what the strategy was behind that messaging. And so they have now received that plan, and that has been included in your board packet. And Carol Schuster from the College of Medicine is here to answer any questions you may have regarding that.
and I just want to comment that I was at the site visit for Merit yesterday, and they're really meeting their conditions, and that billboard is amazing because of the number of locations. And it'll just be awareness for child abuse. And I think that is very, very important. But Carol, do you want to elaborate?
So the campaign is going to be 15 billboards in total across various zip codes in the community. And it's also pretty exciting. I was on a call this morning with the leadership from WTBIO, and they have also agreed to jump on the Child Abuse Awareness Month in April of 2025. So we're going to meet with them, and they're going to be rolling out some other communications in conjunction with our billboard campaign. So that's very exciting to hear that the community is going to be around us. I told the leader from WTBI, Mike, it's kind of like way back when some of us, right, were in high school, and we all knew that there was a drug problem, but people at the schools, people in the community, no one wanted to acknowledge it. And I feel like that's where we are with child abuse. We all know, our providers know, you all know that it's a problem in Rockford, but the general community doesn't, nor do they want to acknowledge that there's a problem. So part of our deal is to just increase that awareness, so that's what the billboard campaign is intended to do.
Good. And so,
Okay. Now. Oh, okay. So I will, yes,
Is this a bottom line change of any sort?
a bottom line change.
no, it doesn't require a budget modification. It was included in the budget. It was just included with the condition that the plan had to be approved before we could actually allow them to expend it.
Got it. Thanks.
Or reimburse them for it.
So we do need a motion in a second to
So
approve this, okay? Well, who did the first?
Bill?
Bill, and you're second, all right. Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, moving on to the resolution 2024 -X, the resolution to authorize the Winnebago County Community Mental Health Board funding and allocation of special project funds for accelerator award applications. The Winnebago County Mental Health Board shall fund the following proposal after review of the application. Amanus, it's Peter and Paul, and the amount is for the mental health program, it's for the Spanish-speaking therapist, for the retreats of the diocese for St. Peter and Paul, and the amount of money requested was $22,000. The Winnebago County Mental Health Board shall not fund the following proposal after review of the application. Kiefer Entrepreneurial Academy, membership for mental health and wellness, expanding support and community engagement. The rationale is the lack of alignment to the Winnebago County Mental Health Board Strategic Plan 2.0, no value in perpetuity, does not improve system capacity. Organization's financial history is incongruent with the amount of the requested funding proposal, does not demonstrate a clear path to financial sustainability. And so I will need, we'll need roll call for this.
Motion first.
First motion and then roll call.
So are we doing one at a time or both of them? Or just
It's both, it was both of us.
That's one resolution.
I was just getting clarification.
Okay, so we have a motion, do we have a second? Dr. Gorski, okay. Moving on to roll call, Andrell Bradshaw. Name, Okay. Dr. Copeland.
Aye.
Dr. Giardini.
Aye.
Dr. Gorski.
Aye.
Dick Kunner.
Aye.
Margie Limmer. Tim Neighbors. Jeff Nielsen. Dr. Penny.
Aye.
Mohammed Yunus. Mary Ann Abadi, aye. Okay. The next is the resolution 2024 XX, authorizing the Winnebago County Community Mental Health Board Accelerator Awards preliminary review determinations for applications received. The Winnebago County Mental Health Board is willing to evaluate and score the following accelerator award proposals. Sound of Good News, Speak It Out, Speak It, Sing It video project. Rosecrans Empowerment Hub. Youth Services Network Transportation Insecurity. Live for Lolly Incorporation Mobile Harm Reduction Outreach Program and Recovery Services. Ineligible for review is Kiefer or the Entrepreneurial Academy. Membership for Mental Health and Wellness Hub expanding support. The ineligibility is because of the scale of budget does not align with the organization's financial capacity. And I'll need a motion for approval for this. Dr. Giardini, and second. Okay, any discussion? Yes.
My only discussion doesn't have to do with these, but I wasn't able to be here last month, but have we hit the timestamp where we will no longer receive any further? And do we know roughly how much money is left of the 10 million?
Yes, so there's roughly 1.9 million left to award. The deadline has been reached. Past the ones that are being reviewed that are part of this, there are approximately how many left, would you say?
I would say that there were about, excuse me, six. that were-
6 additional proposals in addition to the ones that will be the 4 that potentially move forward for review. So up to 10 additional applications. To Tim's earlier question, once we get to a point where we're nearing the funding threshold, we will have to do separate votes for each one, because once the funding is exhausted, any additional funds cannot be awarded.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, so we will need a motion. We do, okay. This does not take a roll call, so no, any further discussion about this? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay. And discussion items, moving on, core program renewal for program year 5-6 application process.
I'm gonna go to the podium because it's gonna be hard for me to go through the slides with my back turned, and our slide up here is hiding. I have included some handouts for the board members. I have been asked by several board members to include a more frequent and regular financial report. This is information that Terry and I have prepared, that Terry was planning to present to the county board. That has not been scheduled yet, but we can move forward with presenting that to the mental health board and keep this as an ongoing quarterly process. Terry, please feel free to chime in any moment if you would like to add any commentary when we get to the financial update. First, we're going to start with the core program renewals. So as I had mentioned earlier, there were 13 programs out of the So there are 44 awards that were made when we went to multi-year funding. After we consolidated contracts based on some new ones that were able to be combined with renewals, we had 38 contracts. Of those, 13 were one-year contracts with a renewal option, 25 were three-year contracts. So the three-year contracts, we don't really have to deal with for a while, but we're doing the routine compliance things and outcomes, financial reports, et cetera. For the 13, they're coming up on their 1 year, that's the end of May. So before that, they need to have the opportunity to be considered for another year or another 2-year contract to get them to the, finish line of where the 3-year contracts are. That money has already been set aside, so to speak. It was part of, it's been budgeted as part of that 60 million that went out. So I believe it's roughly 8 million that, is available for these renewal contracts, okay? And so what we're proposing is a non-competitive funding opportunity, meaning that it is not open to any agency in the community. It is only open to those that have 1-year contracts. And it will be for up to the amount that has been set aside, essentially in that 60 million for these renewals. Being that it is non-competitive, it is essentially each program being weighted against themselves. Are they meeting their objectives and requirements and things that they've suggested and were contracted to do? And each one can essentially be an up or down road. Right? There's not a consideration of ranking or prioritization, it's just yes or no. Here's what we believe the process could look like. We've already vetted the funding opportunity. We have a draft of it that's already gone through legal. We are looking now at kind of what the timeline could look like. And so what we believe could be a workable timeline is that at the January 8th meeting, we could bring that as an action item to the mental health board. Just wanted you to have the opportunity for feedback and discussion before it became an action item. That then the application portal would open immediately upon approval, giving 6 weeks for these organizations to fill out what would be somewhat of an abbreviated application process, not as intensive as when it is a competitive funding opportunity, but just meeting the basic objectives of answering questions of compliance, staffing, budget, et cetera. Of course, then also taking into consideration is the fact that each of these will have had a site visit in that time. Then if the application portal closes on February 19th, we will have 1 week as R1 staff to take those applications, get them prepared for review for the board members, put in any comments, do any follow-up questions that might be necessary, make sure the report cards are up to date with the most recent information, and get that all to the board members so that you can start your reviews on February 26th, and then have just under 3 weeks, but 3 weekends. I always try to make sure you have enough weekends to do. Not all of you do it on the weekends, but some of you do. So 3 weekends, just under 3 weeks to do your reviews. There will be 13, but they'll be abbreviated. So one of the things I would like feedback on you is, do you want us to do the random assignment where you each only end up doing 5, or do you want to just all do 13? Because it will be a little quicker. So think about that and please give me some feedback on that. And then the evaluations will be due by March 16th. That will give us essentially 2 work weeks to take that information, compile it, summarize it, and put that into a resolution that could be approved by the board on April 2nd. Then that gives us just under 2 months to execute those contract options, for additional years with a June 1st continuation date for those programs. Let me stop there for a second and then we'll get feedback there in a month. Yes.
Yeah, Jason, did you say, that I heard correctly, 8 million is set aside already on the,
Yeah,
would that be on the presumption that they all get funded?
correct.
Is that just for the next program year or for 2 program years?
2 program years.
Okay. Thank you.
Just, so the application deadline is at the 26th?
Yes.
Or the
Oh, no, the 19th. Then we'd be proposing the 19th, which I believe would give, is that less than 6 weeks? Is that 5 weeks?
No,
I thought it was 6 weeks.
I think the weeks are right. I was just trying to see how that, in the thing I have before me, talks about submission and timeline deadlines, and it has Google Forms will be accessible January the 8th, will close February 28th.
You might have a older form. That was the original date, timeline that we had drafted. And then once we kind of walked through all the additional things that needed to happen after that, we felt that would be a very compressed timeline between February 28th and April 2nd to have the board members do reviews and for us to then draft a resolution that didn't have errors in it. So good catch. And so we would need to update that, and is that in the draft NOFO or, yeah, so we would have to update that in a notice of funding before that became approved, if we all agree with this being a reasonable timeline. Any other feedback on the timeline or review process? And I'm gonna get your feedback on a rationale. So we have throughout the years, it has been years now. Throughout the years, we've occasionally been asked by board members if we would want to do a more detailed rationale for each of the applications to be supporting documentation along with the resolutions that kind of maybe documents more than the 2 or 3 bullet points that are generally in the resolution. I think there's pros and cons of that, and I think we need to thoughtfully consider the pros and cons of that. But this would be a good opportunity to pilot that if we wanted to do it in a non-competitive funding cycle, because it's not going to have the same pressures, right? So if we want to see what that looks like, now would be the opportunity to pilot that and then to refine it so that when we enter a competitive funding cycle, we feel like comfortable with the information that's in there and how it might be used. Here's an example of a rationale from Champaign County Mental Health Board that their staff developed and put forward to the board. They make an actual staff recommendation there. I probably would want to be just shy of a staff recommendation and more of a just summarization of what we saw in the board member feedback and putting it back to you with what we feel that feedback supports as a decision. So I want to put that out for consideration, but also note that the additional thing we've now added to our portfolio that we weren't doing before were these report cards. And so I guess the question would be, is the report card sufficient as a kind of attachment that gives information? Or do you feel that a kind of narrative would be helpful? So I'm just going to open that up for board member feedback because you all are the ones doing the reviews. You know.
Has there been a request for further information or more detail?
So often when programs are denied, they will want information on why they were denied. So I think one of the considerations would be, you know, this information will likely be requested by programs that are denied, and there is the opportunity for them to use that as corrective feedback and informational feedback. There is also the opportunity for them to, I guess you would say, desire to relitigate the decision based on what is in the rationale, if that makes sense. And we don't have an appeal process, so I'm not suggesting they actually can relitigate it. We understand that information still is available to them, and there could be that, hey, well, I don't really think that your rationale matches up with what we believed. Yes.
I may not understand completely, Jason. So is this proposal as far as rationale, how the information comes to us? For an example of denial, because not the agency itself, because if they receive a denial, you almost undoubtedly have a conversation with them that involves a narrative.
Right.
So this is for us.
It would be for you, but it's gonna be in your board meeting packet, so it's gonna be for the documentation.
Right.
That's
Right.
We can add our own 2 cents in it too, instead of just going with the rationale like that. We want to put our own words into it.
I guess your own words go into the evaluations, and then we would take that and synthesize and try to put that into a rationale.
Okay. Because I'm looking at the example of is that what we would choose from?
Those would
If
be,
we were denying or accepting, are those the things we would choose from that?
I mean, we could customize it for what our needs are, those
Okay.
are options. For the non-competitive renewal, it would probably be renew with a 1-year contract at the current funding amount, renew with a 1-year contract at a reduced funding amount, renew for a 2-year contract at the current funding amount, renew for a 2-year contract at a reduced funding amount, or do not approve. Those are really your 5 options for renewal programs.
So understood, the question on the next slide was, do we need this and the report card?
Correct, right. Like, we already added the report card now, and we give that to you at the site visits, and we intend to include that with your review. So I just want to make sure that we're giving the board members the information you want, particularly when you're making a resolution to vote on 13 or sometimes 50 things. Do you feel like what you have as supporting documentation is sufficient for that? And if the report card and evaluation is enough, then we can just keep it as is. If you want some type of supporting rationale document, then I just have to kind of consider what that will look like. 1 month for that. So if there's no strong desire for a rationale document, then I'm going to just do the report card and the evaluation.
My personal feedback, if that's what you're asking for, is that the report card, given the report card and the evaluation piece, that should be sufficient to instruct somebody who perhaps has been denied and would need to know, okay, why I was denied or what I could do differently to apply next time. Seems to me that would be sufficient, because the more, sometimes the more, for lack of a better word, the more documents you give people, the more litigious it can become. When the issue is, okay, well, what happened? Why didn't we get that? I think the report card is clear enough, and the explanations that go in the evaluations, those are our actual, if I remember correctly, those are our actual comments, just sort of summarized. Then I don't really see a need for like creating a whole nother layer of something just to what end, for what purpose? I don't necessarily see what it's adding.
I can see that. Yeah. I guess.
Yeah,
I'm good with what we have.
To me, the summary document, the narrative is sort of an executive summary of why the conclusion was reached. And we went on a site visit yesterday where I saw the report card. It's probably for me the first time I've seen it. So my only concern would be in the absence of a summary document that puts into objective narrative, not subjective narrative from the staff, but objective narrative, what those key factors were that led to it. Am I going to be smart enough to look at this and the evaluation document and reach that conclusion myself? If I'm not trusting myself that I am, but I don't want to create more work for you either. So if everybody's okay with doing it this way, then that's fine.
I appreciate that. It will create more work for us. I mean, it will,
Yeah.
obviously, it will take time to do that. So that's why I want your feedback, because I don't want to unnecessarily spend time on something that I don't.
I guess with the report card, which I really liked yesterday, thank you for that. And the evaluations, are we gonna have to read between the lines in order to understand the denial? Or it'll be really clear to that?
So, I mean, in a non-competitive funding cycle, it's a little bit easier because
Yeah.
something doesn't get funded, there's gonna be a glaring issue with that program. In the competitive one, the competitive funding cycle, it's tougher because you will have a limited amount to give. And if there's $100 million of requests and there's $60 million of funds, it's not an entirely objective process. There is some subjectivity to it based on the priorities that the board sets. And in those cases, sometimes it's a matter of equity of funding, making sure that not one organization is getting, 33% of the funds. Sometimes it's about making sure that the different target populations are balanced. And so some of those things are more of a collective view rather than in each individual application has its own rationale that led to that determination.
Yeah, I'm fine with just leaving it the way it is. Don't want more work for you all.
All right, well, thank you for your feedback, and we'll move on. So this was the part I started to talk about, which was our financial update. So I have given you a handout for this that includes the basically 4 past fiscal years plus the current budgeted fiscal year of 25. Please note that I have on here fiscal year 24 as budgeted and projected. Fiscal year 24 is done for all intent and purposes over September 30th. However, because our programs, we do expenditure reimbursement grants, there's a lag. So September was month 4 of the grant year. We still have some month 4s that we're processing today to submit for payment, and the county's fiscal year has not yet closed. It's closing very soon, I think within the next week or 2. So they can still process those month 4 payments for expenses that were in September on fiscal year 24. So what I projected is based on essentially what's already been processed and what I think will be processed before the end of the program. I would like to celebrate the fact that we have increased program spending to what will probably be between $19.5 million to $20 million in this fiscal year. Budgeted was $30 million. That was very aggressive to include the $10 million for accelerator awards. We have not expended the $10 million on accelerator. Most of that's going to now hit in fiscal year 25. Some of it will go into fiscal year 26. But to be at that number is really important because we are finally, and I'll show you in this chart, we're at that crisscross point. And that's where we need to be, which is the actual expenditures are at the same level as the revenue. And in every other year prior to this, revenue was exceeding expenditures, which was just adding to the fund balance. And so with a public tax, there really is an actual mandate to spend the money on the things that it was intended, that it's approved for. So you don't want and really can't just have a growing fund balance. So that's a great point to be at. And if you look at the fiscal year 25 budgeted, that will be the first year that we will actually exceed, or the expenses will exceed revenue, which will start to reduce the fund balance, okay? On operational expenses, we came in under budget. Overall operations came in at $674,000 on a $771,000 budget. So that was roughly $100,000 under budget. On the actual contracted staff portion of that, remember, that's not, that operational budget of 770 is not all R1, so to speak. That is legal, that is right, all association fees, all of the mental health board's operational expenses, some of which do not pass through Region 1. On the actual contracted staff charge, it was budgeted at 145,000, we came in under budget on that as well at 595. So about $50,000 under budget on the kind of staff part, and that includes our personnel, fringe benefits for staff working on, and then our occupancy, any allocated costs like shared copy machine, all of that's included in that cost. If we look down at the other category items that might be included in operations, we can see that they were, every single line item operationally was under budget. So not just it's not just an aggregate under budget, it's also under budget on other line items. So we did not exceed the budget on a particular line item. So I think we're at the right number for right now for what we're doing, and staying pretty consistently just under what that budget limit is for each line item. So I'll just pause for a second, let you ask questions, and then I'd like to go to some forecasting. Yes.
Given how the lines have crossed now, Jason, do we think that this is just a speculative question? Do we think that the accelerator award process was a one-year thing that most likely doesn't forecast to be repeated?
I'm going to do forecasting next, and I think that we do need to think about something else, whether it's another round of accelerator or a different idea. I think I shouldn't say budget, we forecasted and budgeted based on a conservative scenario of non-renewal. And you'll see kind of that next page, it's actually, the work plans are next, but if you look at the maybe 4 pages in the non-renewal forecast scenario, you'll see if everything we budgeted hit exactly the way we expected, and also the tax didn't get renewed, we would have been down to about $1 million at the end of the current program contracts. So that's how that number got set. 60 million for core programs 3-year, and 10 million for Excel. That brought us down to a forecast or estimate of $1 million left at the end of it on a conservative non-renewal forecast. If we now go to the next page and you look at what that looks like with the renewal having taken place, you'll see at the end of the current program year contracts and accelerator awards, the fund balance could be roughly around 29 million, and I don't think that's the number you wanted at. I think you probably wanted somewhere between 50% and 100% of a 1-year budget. So I do think there's the need for some additional thinking around spending outside of just the core programs. And I would like to come back to that in a minute, because I have a couple of things that I'd like to put out there.
Excuse me, before we go on, one thing that we know is we get asked about the cost of the operating expenses for this group. So when you hear that number, 600 and what?
So it's just under, well, 674,000 for the entirety of operations.
So if we're just there, and what people talk about in terms of operating expenses, the norm being 10%, and we're putting out $20 million a year, which would mean our 10% is at 2 million, and we're doing it at 675,000. You know, we're talking about operating expenses of about 6%, which is terrific. I mean, really.
We were still at 3%.
3%.
Yeah, that's at the bottom.
Okay.
Yeah.
And actually, so if you look at this sheet here, exactly to your point, Dick, when you look at our counterpart mental health boards and what they spend as a percentage of their overall revenue or as a percentage of their overall expenditures, because that is two different ways to look at it. Sometimes revenue can come in higher than expenditures or vice versa, but generally it's pretty close. And it's usually about 10 to 15%. And we are kind of down here at under 5, and really where we came in, because this was budgeted, now if I update that for projected, which I will do, it's gonna be right about here at 3%.
So Jason, per our conversation, you had brought up Champaign County and McHenry County, which is about the same size as us, correct?
Correct.
And look at what they spend compared to what we spend. So if anything, at that 3.34%, ladies and gentlemen, we are running a really good programming with the amount of money that we're spending. And I hope that really relates to our community, where they all understand where we're coming from on this. When you look at that, and again, Jason and you have been very good at showing me how that all worked out. And when I look at it, I'm like, okay, so we're doing really well. We're doing really well compared to other communities our size. And again, we compare Champaign and McHenry County to us. And 3.34% is like, it's still a lot. To some people, it's a lot of money, but if you look at the great scheme, it's really not.
Can I raise one other point, Jason?
Yeah, please.
Saying a little bit on Terry's point, the other thing is your previous graph, there's been so much chit chat in the community about the fund balance that we have had. And I just wonder if the community is generally aware, as we are, having been here from the beginning, reviewing all these grants, how many of them are workforce related. And even today, the visit, yesterday we were at, from the City of Rockford program, they struggled to hire the people. So to me, I don't know what the percentage of gap was that was related to the difficulty in hiring. I think historically, over the years we've been doing this, that was a significant part of the gap. So perhaps, from a workforce perspective, I don't know that those who chit chat about that in the community truly understand that, we're starting programs in this community are starting new programs. They're looking to hire staff. There's this incredible nationwide scarcity of mental health workers. They're trying to find them. So there's this lag time for them to get ramped up. My feeling is that that's not generally been understood well. I may be wrong about that, but I'm so happy to see that happening. And even our visit yesterday, they have their 4 people now. At least they don't need that other person that they have before, right?
Yeah, so to like maybe even if I can get my mouse to show up here, to further illustrate your point, the first year gap, that was a planning year and getting the grant program started year and setting policy year. The gap of workforce is basically what you see right now, because those funds were awarded, they just weren't spent. Really that gap from here to here is a workforce shortage gap. And same here to here. Those are workforce shortage gaps that luckily, and a testament to the hard work that the programs have done to recruit. And believe me, like one of the number one types of phone calls that I have with programs is their innovative thinking around how do we build our own workforce? How do we, Crusaders here, they've done an awesome job with taking unlicensed clinicians, have a master's degree, bringing them through their pipeline, giving them supervision, and then getting them to the point that they are licensed clinical social workers, licensed clinical counselors that can generate revenue and have financial sustainability within their organization. But I think that, not to say that it shouldn't always be on our radar, but the gap's closed now, I think.
And I just want to emphasize that I think that there was really a lot of affirmation with the voters in Winnebago and Rockford, Winnebago County, voting, by the percentage, more than half of the citizens obviously feel that we're doing some good. Because if they really were not feeling that, we might have had different results.
And so your next attachment in the handout is actually the 2024 work plan. That's now completed. That is one of the accountability mechanisms we have for Region 1 to manage this program for you. That's what I am operating off of every month. I'm looking at what you approve for us to do and how we spend our time. And if there's gonna be something new, that's why I bring it to you for feedback, because that's not already something you've said, hey, do this. We were able to complete every item in that work plan, except for 2. Both of those were scheduled and actually have now been completed, but they weren't completed at the end of the fiscal year, and that was the site visits. We took a little extra time to get those scheduled, but we now have all those scheduled, and those will be completed, as we mentioned, by the end of next week for the 1-year contract programs. And then we also have the Learning Network Collaborative. Number 2, we ended up shifting the Learning Network Collaborative schedule by 2 months, so that one ended up taking place just after the fiscal year ended. But we were able to accomplish all the objectives for fiscal year 24, and you can see what those objectives are that the board approved, you all approved for fiscal year 25, which continues to be my dashboard that I look at. We're each week and each month looking at how to spend our time. Budget and how to spend our time, sorry. So again, the forecasting scenarios that I showed you, I do not want to continue. Kind of illustrate again, so you can see that we did the 60 million in core program funding, of the 10 million in accelerator awards. Earlier, I think Bill, you had asked how much of that has been allocated. So prior to today, this was the number that had been allocated on 12 awards. Okay, and that's 8 million, roughly, just over. And now an additional award has been made today for 22,000. Won't make a big dent in the bottom line budget number, but we'll add another program, so you'll have 13. Okay, with roughly 1.9 million. And again, I talked about why did we do 10 million in accelerate? It's based on that non-renewal forecast scenario. Now that there has been renewal, we need to look at that fund balance number as it's being projected out another 2 or 3 years and think about what are the opportunities for additional spending that don't create a collision down the road where you're over programming and then you have to cut stuff 3 years down the road, but that still add value and support the board's strategic plan while getting the fund balance down to a reasonable number. So a few things with that. When we did the core program funding, we asked each of the renewal programs, what could you do if you had additional funds beyond what you requested, beyond what your current scope of work is? So this would be a, let's say, scope expansion scenario. And we've summarized for you in this kind of a packet item what that scope expansion could look like for the current core programs. This could be a way to get some of that fund balance out without creating additional contracts we have to do. Because what this would do would be expand the current scope, which you could do through a work plan amendment and a budget amendment. And it doesn't create additional administrative burden because it's just adding to the budget and adding to the scope, but it's still going to be one monthly financial submission from each of these programs and one outcomes report every quarter from each of these programs. So again, I just say take a moment to look at that and think about when you read what some of those ideas are those ways that you think would support the board's mission and be a good way to deal with some of the excess funding. Some of these we kind of try to categorize those for you as well, because again, we don't want to create a collision down the road where it just all goes to staffing and then in 3 years from now, we're back to where we need to be, and you have to then cut staff, and people are getting laid off. So some of these ideas are staffing, some of them are programming, some of them are professional development and training, some of them are housing related, some of them are transportation related, some of them are capital related. But several ideas. If we were to go down that path, we'd probably want to explore a non-competitive funding opportunity open to the core programs for scope expansion. And we could create parameters around that. So please consider that. Let's have feedback on that. Yes.
Balance in the county. I mean, we looked at a lot of different ways at this thing. Do we have, and I heard, for example, one criticism that our crisis system on the peripheries of the county is not what it could be. Do we have a way of looking at that?
Yeah, actually, when the data dashboard goes live, which we intend to launch that in January, and we're gonna come back to the board and present that one more time and then go live. We've gotten feedback from the funded programs through the LNC. We're gonna get feedback from Region 1's Community Advisory Forum, which is a committee designed to bring diversity and broad representation into our planning efforts. We found that be a good perspective. But to get to your point, once we've received all that feedback and we're ready to go live, we'll bring that back to the board at the January meeting. You can see for each program what zip code. So you'll know what's being reached and what's not being reached geographically with the crisis response. So that could be another evaluation tool for where are the gaps if you want to see that geographically.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that we've identified as maybe, and this is coming actually a few board members throughout the years, and it's come up again recently, are there programs that maybe the organization is just too small for us, but their mission is the right mission, their mission's aligned, but they don't have the capacity to participate in our core program grants or accelerator grants? What would it look like to do something that's a little more targeted to smaller programs? We have looked at a model from the Children's Service Fund in St. Louis County. They get a 1/4 sales tax for children's services, and they bring in $52 million a year. And you may know that St. Louis County does not include St. Louis City. So that's $52 million a year outside of St. Louis City. St. Louis City has their own mental health board, actually. So we've been looking at them for a while because while McHenry and Champaign are the most comparable to us in size in Illinois that are official mental health boards, Children's Service Fund's a little bit bigger than us. So we're looking for innovative ideas. We're kind of looking at what they're doing. Some of our communications things that we did with the toolkit were inspired by some of their work. When we kind of were creating the terminology around core program funding, that was borrowed from them. They do $150 million over 3 years for their core programs, and we have 71. So they're doing, they're much bigger than we are. And in October, we had the opportunity to go to a peer exchange with our counterparts in Madison County. Chelsea and I, and Mark Hooks, who used to work with us, went down there. And we had an opportunity to meet with the Children's Service Fund team as well, learn more about what their operation was, and developed a nice connection with them that we can exchange ideas with them. They were very, I guess, proud of their grassroots funding program that they started in 2021. They found through their core funding that because of the way they did it, where they do a unit rate model of funding and they have these kind of measurement and outcomes reports, much like we do, that not every organization really had the capacity to participate in that, but there were organizations that were critical to their community, parts of their community, that needed support that just didn't fit within their core program funding. So they started grassroots funding in 2021, meant to provide meaningful and innovative services strategically invested in smaller community-based organizations in partnership with their community advisory committee. And they did 2 million as a pilot in 2021 for 2 years, funded 19 agencies, and their board liked it so much, they upped their budget item to 3.6 million for 2023 and did additional 2-year award on that. So basically, their criteria for theirs is it has to be a registered 501c3 or a government agency. It has to, of course, still fall within their targeted priorities within their strategic plan and their focus areas, but they're really focused on organizations with an operating budget smaller than $1 million that align to parts of the community that are underserved or that they really align with geographically that aren't always being reached by the bigger organizations. And so that's their approach to it. So again, I just asked for your feedback as we think about additional ways to spend funds that's not just pulling more of the core programs, grants, and creating a problem down the road, what that might look like from non-competitive scope expansion to grassroots funding opportunities. Yes.
I wonder if they found in their, as they threw the net out to receive proposals from these small organizations, if they found any of them that could then work together, who maybe had common purpose, and maybe if they, joined, maybe not officially joined, but if they joined their efforts together, they could accelerate their outcomes by virtue of coming together rather than remaining individual applicants. I don't know if
That's
they.
a great question. Yeah, and we have a relationship with them now, and we'd be happy to follow up and give a host of questions answered on what their experience with that has been. Back to the just administrative accountability, that's not on our current work plan, so I don't want to go down that path unless the board's giving me feedback that you'd like me to explore that. So please let me know if you feel this is something that we should be thinking about. I'm happy to do a follow-up with them and get the real kind of meat and potatoes of the program, what their impacts have been, what the stories of success have been, what the partnerships that have formed have been, and all of that, and just bring that back to you.
I'd like to see.
Yeah, why don't we?
Okay. We
So
have to
moved.
explore it. So moved. Consensus has been reached.
That's right.
Okay. Well, we will do that then. Thank you. And that concludes our discussion items for today that we have.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Great job. Moving on to other matters, I just want to keep you informed about the advisory, behavioral health advisory committee. I attended 3 of their meetings, and they have decided on the outside consulting group that they would like to hire, and that is Guidehouse. It primarily, they chose Guidehouse because of the expertise in the within the company, and that they bring in the expert for the subject matter, and they the consensus was that this would be a great company to do business with. So that's what they're going with, and they're very anxious to get it going. So we'll see how that all rolls out. And then that's all.
I'll make a motion for adjournment.
Okay, we need a second.
One more thing.
Okay, Dan.
I wanted to ask if we could do like a team builder or just like some kind of get together outside of business scope, soon, so that way we could fellowship with the board members and get to know the board members a little bit, since we have so many.
Okay, not around business, just
Right.
fellowship.
Right.
Sure.
Think that-
Is that still a public meeting?
No, as long as you don't talk
Not
business.
if you do not have
We all,
an agenda.
we stay away from the agenda.
We all sit there and go, or 2 people go.
So are you going to organize this?
I have no problem.
Okay, I think that's good. Terry tried, some time ago to get a salad to the Mississippi Power.
Yeah. 40 miles.
Okay, so who's second? Oh, we haven't had a second. You had that comment. So is the board interested in Tim Planning Fellowship? Because,
Yes.
I'm going to his party.
yeah.
Well, it's not at a funeral.
That's right. Yeah. Okay, I need a second.
Second.
Oh, thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
That'd be quite-
Thank